Hello and welcome to Here's the Pitch, a special edition, a repeat edition, as I'm coming to you with sad news. I think everyone may have read this or heard on the show. This week, Al Rosenberg has passed. It's 78 years old, and Al was a big part of the show in the early days. Howard did a pretty good tribute to him, and I did get a chance to talk to him about his time on the show, and was very fortunate to have some laughs with him. I learned of him during the Channel 9 show when he was on in a big part of that, and when he was doing his Henry Hill impression, and then he was part of one of the greatest moments of the show during the Scott Salem push-up challenge. So rest in peace, Al. I really appreciate his time. He was great when we talked. We talked a little bit before interview. I kept in contact with him a little bit after it. But here is my chat with Al Rosenberg. Again, so sad. I feel bad for anyone who is close to Al, but hopefully this will make you laugh and think about how funny he was. Appreciate you guys coming here to the channel, and here's my chat with Al Rosenberg. Hello and welcome to Here's the Pitch. I'm Brad, your YouTube friend, and it's sponsored by Massa's Restaurants in St. Louis. There's 5 locations. STLMassas.com is the website. You know that. Go there, check out those menus. Find directions if you're driving through St. Louis or in the Midwest and looking for some Italian food. You know, Jackie, the joke man Martling, who was our last guest, he's going to come through and have some meatballs with me. Subscribe, obviously. Comment and share these with everybody. I'm excited today because we have a long-time lifer Stern person today. This is a lot of people go, what's Al Rosenberg up to? What's he look like? And I say, there he is, Al Rosenberg from the WNBC days. Hello and welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Hi, this is what dead looks like. So, in case you were wondering,
give me some Maya Angelou. Well, right off the top, if you still can channel her.
Oh, I spent years and years and years. I don't think I did Maya Angelou. I might have. I don't remember. I think that probably was Billy West, who I just heard from recently in the last couple of days. So,
how'd that go? Tell me about Billy West and you guys' conversation, if you don't mind.
Oh no, I sent him a birthday thing, and nobody answers those things, and he texted back. You know, we just exchanged a couple of stuff. He said the funniest thing I've ever heard. Do you want a story?
Well, that's what we're here for, right?
The Howard Stern pay-per-view. I was a writer, and, of course, he dressed me in a Nazi uniform to embarrass me. But anyway, Billy and I were talking, and one of the kids from Star Wars, tell me the name of the Luke Skywalker, because I don't remember it at this point. Mark Hamill.
I was going to say Harrison Ford, and I knew that was wrong, so good job.
Mark Hamill came over to talk to us and tell us what big fans he was. And he evidently had been in a motorcycle accident or something. He was all banged up. And when he walked away, Billy turned to me and just as loud as anything, he looks like a dead guy, a dead teenager is what he said. I don't know if he heard it, but I just out of nowhere, where did that come from? But Billy was always a genius, so,
I was going to say, how often do you keep up with Billy? Because he really kind of took that spot at K-Rock when you were there.
Yeah, he really turned the whole show, as far as I know, in a totally different direction with all the characters that he could do. Don't speak to him that often. Speak to Jackie occasionally, emails and stuff. Pretty much Howard emails, no actual verbal contact, but we do. If I write to him, he'll answer. That's basically the deal with us. Yeah, most of the people I don't have much to do with.
Well, when was the last time you did have contact with Howard? I'm just curious about that, and how does that go? It's cool, I guess, that he still at least emails you back. He remembers you being there.
He's very loyal, very faithful, very loyal. I've never had a complaint about how he's treated me over the years. I think the last time I saw him was, well, he always invited me to like the K-Rock parties and then the serious Christmas parties. But the last time I see him might have been his wedding. But I think also there were parties after that, because I was on the Miserable Man show for a while. Right. And he considered me part of the Sirius family. He invited me to a lot of things. I had no business being there, but he was, that's who he is.
That is cool that I think about that. That's right, Miserable Men. But what was the last time you actually called into the show, and what was the reason? And talk about that a little bit.
I don't know. It probably was an Imus incident. Imus had one of his lungs had collapsed, and he called me. Howard called me, and I said, "Well, it's hard to blow out those 70 candles with one lung." It was his birthday, but my memory is not what it was. I'm 75 years old now, so I don't remember a lot of names and stuff, but I do remember incidents.
Do you have the same distaste for Imus as Howard does, or do you kind of chalk it up as kind of radio wars?
Well, no. I mean, I left on bad terms. Right. But in retrospect, when I first started working with Imus, he was much like Howard in the sense of being driven. I mean, a lot of time spent in the studio, a lot of time working stuff out. But then as years went by, he started to become less of that and more of a tyrant. And when I left, it's because I had to. Howard was like a freaking hurricane and tornado coming through NBC at the time. But yeah, Don was like Howard, and then he, in the sense of being intense and caring about your product. But as time went by, he drifted further and further away from that.
I think it's funny you say that. I'm thinking about his last maybe 10 years when you'd hear Fred doing the Imus impression, and it was like he was asleep. It was literally, you'd hear a clip, and he would be asleep. And I thought about this today, looking at the stuff, is that, Imus, I think, retired or didn't retire. He was told, we don't have any more work for you. Like, finally, he was let go, RFD TV, and then he died a little bit later. I wonder how long he would have survived if he was still on the radio. It feels like he's one of those guys that, if he didn't have that, it was just, what's the point of living? I'm being very obviously social and psychologically, but it is interesting that he died pretty quickly after learning he was not going to be on the radio.
Right. I think it's one of the things that guys die when they stop working. In that business. I think you're onto something. I think it gave him a reason to get up in the morning, to go to work and do stuff, and then when that ends, what's left? So.
I mentioned Maya Angelou, so you did do this impression. It doesn't sound anything like her.
If you say so.
Well, it was from the, we were mentioning this before we started, the Scott, the Engineer Push-Up Challenge, which is such an amazing show. It was right as Howard kind of started becoming, so this show obviously is done in St. Louis, and that was right as Howard became huge and got affiliated everywhere. So we got him here around 97, 98. So that was like I think the first big thing that happened. But you're in there on the dais, and you talked about the trainer giving you problems. But the only thing you really did was a Maya Angelou impression, which was, there was no poetry. It was basically your Dr. Ruth, I think you were doing as Maya Angelou. But it's just...
Let me talk like this, yeah, sure, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that day, though, because it's a funny day. It's still, if you watch on YouTube, I laugh every time I see it. My wife goes, you've seen this 18 times. How do you still laugh? And I said, it's hilarious. All of it is hilarious.
The push-up show, you mean?
Yeah.
I was called in as a judge. So I don't know why, but for some reason, you mentioned the trainer's name, and his name was...
Radu.
Radu, and for some reason, I kept calling him Wazoo. What the Wazoo over there is doing, I criticized him, and I could tell he was getting angry, and we went to break, and he comes charging over to me, and he says, "You fat man, let me see you do some push-ups." I said, "I'm not here to do push-ups. I'm here to make you pissed off. And I'm going to make you do push-ups." You can't make me do push-ups. I'm not going to do that. So anyway, yeah, those are moments that don't go out over the radio, I don't think. But he just came running across the studio to get in my face. And I just thought it was the funniest thing, because he just, what am I here for? I'm not here to count. I'm here to make fun of you.
Could you take him if need be? He was a tiny little guy, but stocky.
I think I would probably pick up Fred and hit him with Fred. I think Fred would actually defend me if it worst came to worst.
Where did you stand that day? Did he do the 19 push-ups? Do you remember if you thought so?
I think in memory that they gave him some slack. I think that, the whole point was not that it was $10,000 or something. I don't think it was the money, at least for Howard. I think he would pay $10,000 for a bit that would work well on his show, and it certainly was huge from what I remember. So, yeah,
it was funny. Do you have any contact with Scott? I mean, Scott left weirdly the last year or so. Have you talked to him? Do you keep in touch with him at all?
No, I did speak to him a couple times earlier on, and if you're going to be on that show, you have to understand what the deal is, and abuse is you're going to get abuse. He was always kind with me back at NBC in terms of my personal life. He did make fun of an issue I had with some hemorrhoids and stuff because I made the mistake of telling him. But he, for the most part, if you're on that show, there's a lot of benefits to it. Maybe making a living isn't, but that's never the point in radio. But if you come there, you bring all the baggage from your house with you because everybody on that show rats each other out all the time. So your story will eventually become public, and you want your family to be exposed to that because they will be. So I didn't know what to tell him. I know I sent some money to him when I knew he put up a GoFundMe thing for his wife. I did send him money because my wife had died just a couple of years before that. I did send him some money, and I did reach out to him a couple of times and try to remind him, you're in the bag. Everybody on that show has a turn in the barrel. It's the way it is. But it's hard after a while, I would imagine.
I was just to say, there's some guy like Gary has. Anytime we have these conversations, it's almost like, but Gary gets the last laugh because he has $1 million home and stools and all these wonderful things. So from 5 to 10 in the morning, he has to take shit, and then he goes home and loves his house.
And then will he ever have to work again? I don't know. If he wants to work, I'm sure somebody wants a producer. There's nobody better than him at booking guests and getting people on the show. I had the pleasure of interviewing Gary for The Job with Fred. Fred and I interviewed Gary for the first time, and Fred told him that you have to wear a suit to work. So for the first couple of days or week, I don't know how that he came to work. He came to work in a suit, and it was in the summer, and he had it at the subway into work, and nobody said anything. He just showed up in a suit and worked, and then finally Fred said, "No, you don't. Nobody. We're all wearing T-shirts, and some of us didn't wear shoes half the time, but." There was no mercy on that show. So
I was going to say, did you guys know that the fact that he had these giant teeth would become the reason to hire him because it'd be instant comedy if need be, if something was going wrong? Well, let's get Gary in here and make fun of those teeth.
That evolved. We didn't do that. He was picked on for other reasons, I think, where he lived, his accent. I think there were a lot of things to pick on. And the boy Gary was his first name. But before him was Boy Lee. And then there was another guy before that as producers. But boy, talk about longevity. That's a job that lasted, the eternity job.
That and Fred and Robin. I mean, you sat next to Robin, right, at the WNBC days? Is that what I kind of recollect, or where did you sit?
At the NBC, it was a small studio with 1, 2, 3, 4 chairs. I sat on the far right one. And Robin would come in and sit, I think, sometimes next to me and sometimes on the other side of Howard. But he had a drum and he hit that boom every time there was a joke. But just, I sat there in awe over this guy's mind and where it went. It was just scary. It was frightening is what it was.
Let's kind of just get into the history. You're at WNBC early on, right, before Howard even gets there, and you're working with Imus, and then Imus replaces you with his wife or something. So give me that history and then just how you and Howard kind of meet at that point, and how long were you at WNBC by that time?
Probably 3 years, because I started there in 1980 or 80, I think 1980. But I had been calling in the show starting in the late 70s because I created a character. And I called in the show as a black investment counselor. And so I got on the show regularly, and then they started paying me. And then,
what did that sound like? If you can recreate that here 40 years later.
Say, good morning, Thomas. How you doing this morning? It's Earl C. Watkins. What's up, baby? And then I would, come up with a friend of mine in Philly told me this. I used it. I said, I developed something, a surefire, get-rich-quick thing. It's called Buckabeat. It's a coin-operated heart pacemaker. You have to put $1 in every hour, and your heart keeps beating. So he loved that stuff. And I called him in. I was calling him in 2-3 times a week, and then it became a job.
So I don't know if you know
and then Howard showed up, and there was a lot of trepidation amongst people. And at first, it was just Howard and Fred. But I really liked both of them. I mean, I used to hang out there after my work was done on the morning show, and I got to the point where I think I was interfering with their work, and they had to say something to me. But then when I had the falling out with Imus, I went right to Dominic Fioravanti, the program director, and said, "Can I work with Howard?" Because I still had a contract. And he said, "Yeah, but do it now. Ask him now." And I went, and Howard said, "Yeah, I'd love to have you," because Dominic quit the next day, and he wanted it in writing that I was going to now work for Howard. So thank you, Dominic. But and from then on, I was just in love with those guys. It was the best.
So I was watching some old clips just to get my mind right for this, because I got to be honest, I didn't hear these shows. This is way before my time, before they showed up in St. Louis. But I did see one where Imus kind of came in and talked with Howard. When did they start fighting? Was it right away as soon as you joined them, or how soon was it those two were at each other?
Imus never said anything bad about Howard in front of me. His position, both with management and with, in private and public, was leave the guy alone. He'll succeed or fail based on what he's doing. And I know I was in meetings with NBC where he would say that, leave him alone and let him see you don't know what he might be big, he might be great. But if you keep pushing at him and, a pig virus threw a phone at Howard once. One of those landlines, he threw it at the plate glass window because Howard said something. It was hard days for him. Happy days for me, horrible days for him. So
when you watch Private Parts, that's the thing I thought of, was like you sat there and saw all this happen right in front of you, and like the phone scene is in there, the match game is in there.
I was there. Where was I?
Why are you not in the movie, Al? Let's talk about that.
It's not my story. I'm not in Jackie's book either. But it's not my story. It's his story, and I think having me as an element of that show, based on what it was when the movie came out, would have been very confusing. But I was there for all the match game stuff. And Jackie used to come in with his jokes and stuff. But I do remember being in all of those things, a lot of meetings with management. But it's not my story. It's Howard's story. And that it's a much better story than putting me in it and making it confusing. And you can't blame somebody in the business for doing what they do. It's hard. So if you find something that works, don't mess it up by trying to be nice to a friend.
I was going to say, how much did you write any of the match game, or is that all Jackie writing and you doing voices?
No, the three of us, Robin was probably there at the time, but Robin was locked in the newsroom. They were awful to Robin also. But we would have these writing sessions in the office, right before the show. And or Fred and I would tune some things up. But Howard was very much part of the writing mix and having the idea that generates what we were going to do. So he's just brilliant. He's a genius.
I was going to say, how soon do you realize? Because I think by the time you get to the 90s, everyone's trying to do Howard's act. But this is the first guy doing what he's doing. I mean, when do you realize this is amazing? What's happening? I can't believe he's.
Day one. Day one. They gave him a trial to get comfortable in the studio and everything. And he was doing the overnights. And what he did was he did Out of the Closet Stern. So everybody heard them and thought, two gay guys are going to be doing radio on NBC, because he stayed in character through the whole night that he was working. But he always had a vision, and he was just I don't know. I don't want to get too goofy because I've worked with some really good people, but he was just far and away like a messiah. He had a vision. He had a dream for himself, and there he is.
So I was checking on the history of Howard Stern, and you played a big part of that. They played a lot of your interviews from that, and I know Shuli interviewed you. The Gilda Radner moment, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit. What was that like? I guess she had a real problem when she came in. And
I was there that day. I was in the studio that day. She came prepared to be hurt, in my opinion. I think he was very, very polite. I mean, I know he loved her because he talked about it. But she came in, and he said, "I'm a big fan of yours." And she said, "Oh, a big fan, like you'll track me down and kill me," or something like that. No, I'm a big fan. But then he had to ask the stern questions, like, when did you lose your virginity? And things like that. And she was very uncomfortable, but she was locked and loaded and prepared for a hard day. And she was offended by almost everything that he said. I know he blames himself for that interview. But I think she was prepared to be offended, and I think that's why I think it went badly.
Some of those earlier moments obviously were captured in the movie, but do you have favorite ones that you kind of always remember back to when you think about those days in the early
'80s? Naked Girl, first time probably in not NBC except maybe for the executive Christmas party, but. He had a woman from Philadelphia come in, and she actually did take her clothes off. And we had put newspapers over the glass windows because the tours would come by from NBC, and there'd be a crowd of people from Omaha looking through the window, and they were afraid of seeing a naked lady in there. We put up newspaper over the windows, and the lawyers came down from NBC and said, we need to go into the studio, and the producer at the time would not allow them in. The program director would not allow them in. It was I'm trying to remember the guy's name. And Lyndon Abel was the program director. And he's standing at the door, would not let them in, physically not let them in. And they talked about suing and losing jobs. But yeah, she took all her clothes off, and she was kind of druggy. I mean, I don't want to accuse her of anything, but she kept trying to sit on Howard's lap. And it's the last thing he wanted a naked woman he did not know sitting on his lap. But he had to actually fend her off. No. But that was one breakthrough moment. We went to somebody's prom. That was driving all the way up to Connecticut to go to a high school prom. There's too much stuff. It's just, the book signing. We're getting ready to go to his first book signing. Nobody knew how big he was, I think, at that point. And he says, out of nowhere, he says, "I think we should all go in blackface." And I said, "This is New York. You can't. No, we'll never make it the 5-block walk to the bookstore." When we got there, the lines were around the block waiting to have him sign the books. Nobody knew that. We just strolled over to the bookstore, and the lines were just around the block. Phenomenal. Nobody knew that was happening.
Do you think
It's too many.
No, I was going to say, I mean, and I think he's trying to erase all of these old-time things, the naked women. I know he was in blackface a lot. What do you think?
He's in denial about his past, but his past was breakthrough stuff. Everybody who's trying to do it is just playing catch-up. And they lose jobs because he paved the way for them, but they always go too far. Like, I think the two of the guys that lost their show they did something in a church.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're going to get fired. That's what's going to happen. That's the deal.
You try to imitate him, but don't do the things that he does. You try to take another step. How about the slap fest? Remember that? When I guess that other one of they're like, "Hey, we're going to slap people and see how we can get them to pass out."
But that's the funny thing is, you're right. People think, "Oh, I'll do what he's doing." Well, yeah, but you're not going to do it as well. And he's already captured that audience. And I used to hear people doing stuff. You're copying him, and it's really awful. It's just not good. He was the best one at doing what he does. So, yeah.
When Jackie arrives, did you feel any this what's going on here, or was it?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, funny story. We had Andy Krentz was the kid who was our intern. A little skinny Jewish kid with glasses and the whole deal. Big time lawyer now, I understand. He would come in and hand Howard information, and Jackie would come in with a list of screen jokes, and he would want them copied. The kid used to come in early and then tell Howard the jokes that Jackie was going to do off mic. And Howard said, "This kid's hands, he's pretty funny." Then we noticed that Jackie's doing the same jokes. He would come in and torpedo Jackie's act by letting Howard had heard all these jokes before he went on the air. It's weird people attracted. But anyway, Jackie was a welcome person. I think that one of the best, if not the best, ad-libbing guy around. I got on an elevator with him once, and I had a leather jacket, and I'm a large person, and it was a large jacket, and Buchwald was there, and a couple of other people. We're on the elevator. Jackie's looking at me, and I said, "What are you looking at?" He said, "I feel sorry for the herd." I mean, how many calories did it take to make that jacket? But out of nowhere, just out of nowhere. Great man. And
I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but so WNBC, you have to stay there because you have a contract. They moved to K-Rock. Just give me that. What did that feel like to you to see this ship that you knew was going to get big, right? You had to feel like this show was going to take off in the morning. What did it feel like for you not to be able to?
There were no guarantees about that happening. I mean, Buchwald said, we had the same agent. Buchwald said, "This is the best thing that ever happened to Howard, getting fired at NBC." But I helped him carry the boxes and stuff out of the studio down to the plaza, Rockefeller Plaza, where the skating rink is, because the cabs were going to pick him up and take him and his stuff home. And people from the NBC News were stopping by. "What are you doing? You were fired. How is that possible?" Anyway, so we loaded him up. But then I forget where I'm going with this, but.
Well, he leaves and goes, but you have to stay.
Here's the thread, because you did bring up a good point. I did stay. I had a contract that lasted for 3 years after that. I probably could have broken it, but I had a wife with cancer and 4 kids going into college. So that's, it's tough when you're in the business and your decision-making thing is, I got to keep making a living. So, but I think the show outgrew me. I really think that Jackie brought an element to the show that took it in a different direction. I think Howard, no one has a better feel for that show than Howard. So I think Howard's position was Jackie's really going to work, but he really exploded the show. I think Jackie was a big part of those days. And he sets the scene for who's going to sit in that chair. I did get a chance to sit in there a couple times, but if I was ever in the building or in New York, he'd say, "Come on into the studio," and I'd hang out with him, and it was always a great moment. But Jackie really, and Howard's sense of what the show was going to be, I don't think I would have been good enough to be on that show.
Yeah, and I always think there's been now I'm saying 4 eras. I used to say the Jackie era, the Artie era, but there's your era before that, and then what he's doing now after. So there's 4 different real line of demarcations of what he's done. So yeah, I could see that. Tell me.
I'm going to name drop one of the executives from NBC. One of the guys who used to produce Saturday Night Live. He was on a TV show that I was working on. And Howard's name came up, and he said, "Howard is the male Madonna. He reinvents himself every couple of years, and he morphs into something better than he was." Brandon Tartikoff is the one who said that. He's Madonna. He'll never go away. He'll always have a new version of him that's better than the other, and that's exactly who he is. He just grew, evolved, and he's what we have now.
So how much of the Channel 9 show were you a part of? Did you do all 69 shows, or how often were you working on that?
I worked. There were some funny moments there, and you'll never see the outtakes, the things we wouldn't dare put on the air. And some of them were the funniest things ever. I got to work on that show for a year. with Mark Cronin, who went on to do a bunch of reality TV shows with the other writer, and Jackie. And I have the tapes somewhere. I recorded all the phone meetings with Howard and the gang, because half the time that we were writing stuff, Howard was making fun of us. Remember they went through the art thing where he was drawing caricatures of all of us, like, oral sex on each other, and just anyway, the laughs kept coming. He was just great. But I had really a great opportunity, and Howard always found ways to put me into the sketches. I don't know if I call them sketches anymore, but into the bits. He involved me in stuff that really no reason to do that. But it was a lot of fun.
Well, that show,
yeah.
I was a teenager or young, I mean, maybe not even teenager yet, when that thing showed up in St. Louis, and it would air at 3 a.m, and I would record it. We'd watch it. Me and my brother and my dad would watch it the next day. And you'd never seen anything like it. And again, as he was doing on radio, now he was doing that on TV. The fact that he was playing his own tapes and stopping them and commenting, and then just there's no, Jackie laughing in the background, and there was nothing like this show. And I just kept saying, because we didn't get him here, we didn't get the radio show, so we had no idea what this was. And this TV show was just out of left field and hilarious, but only shown at 3 a.m. in St. Louis. So, I knew at that point, I'm like, this is. I mean, he became one of the guys that I really looked up to as a broadcast legend. I was like David Letterman, Howard Stern, Vince McMahon, the big three, and then Bob Costas, who did everything straight. But that show was just so crazy.
That TV show did broadcast in New York, and Howard outdrew Saturday Night Live. They shared the first half. Our last half hour shared with their first half hour. Howard's ratings were higher than Saturday Night Live, and he's not nationwide. He's, where he is, he's got an audience. And yeah, it was just, the meetings were all by phone. And then once a week we'd all meet together, and just, but anything was, the tribute to breasts. If you remember that one, that was Mark Cronin's idea, and out of nowhere. And you remember, people remember the judge was, Davey from the Monkees. He walked in, being a guest host, and suddenly he's judging breasts. And he was, talk about a fish out of water. He didn't know he was going to be doing that. Where does that come from? And where does he have the courage to actually do that, Oh, I got a breast examination that on that show. So that was, and Howard manipulated my breasts at that moment.
It was... everything about it was hilarious, and he had, like you said, I always wondered. I'm like, do these people? He could have like somebody from Cagney and Lacey come in, and they would be in this skit. It's like a Dirty Dancing skit or whatever, and it was like you could tell she was like, "What's going on here?" But she still played along. I can't remember her name, and he was telling her how hot she was, and it was funny.
We had Loretta Swit and the guy who played the Major from MASH on. God knows why they were booked, but. So we came. I think it was my idea. I'll take credit for it because no one can argue with me about it. But I said, "What would happen to the doctors?" Well, they're now working in L.A. and they do breast operations, enlargement. So we did a whole skit about Howard was Hawkeye and doing breast implants, and we got one of those squirting blood things that when you press and it spurted, like an oil well of blood. Blood was everywhere. A sack. It was just horrible. But both of them went along with it for some god-awful reason. But I think one of them was drinking. I won't tell you which one, but one of them was a little easy to get along with. But, don't forget the Zsa Zsa Gabor show, which was where we used a one-way glass to trick her into, we just made her so miserable. The problem with that show is you had to get people to sign a release first, because they would never sign it if they knew what you were going to ask them to do. But that show was just wide open.
I'm trying to remember the Gary Busey one where he had just fallen off a motorcycle like a year before. It was Head Injury Club for Men show. Howard had this whole tape and there was blood coming out.
Howard with blood leaking out the side. I got to be Elvis's mother on one also. Elvis. He's contacting Howard was channeling Elvis's dead mother. That was just where does that come from? Where does your mind come from?
It's funny stuff. I appreciate you taking some time to run through this. It seems like you're happy about your time there. No regrets. Some people leave and they get kind of bitter, but man, I mean, it seems like you had just a great time. Anything you're up to now, and are you just having a good time being retired? And tell me what's going on with you now.
I'm kind of retired, but I'm very involved locally. I'm on the board of a charity here in New York. I get to be involved in that. I'll plug them. It's Rise, and it's a food pantry. Because food's important to me, as you can tell. But anyway, we do a lot of good things in that way, and I'm involved in local politics. And
you were mayor. Were you mayor for a second? No, you ran for.
First of all, if I were mayor, someone would have to assassinate me because there's no way that it would work. But no, I'm on the council, and But I love where I live and I love what I'm doing. I don't think I have very many bad memories. I have, a lot of stuff. I started to write some of this stuff because I know we're running out of time. We did two things on the show that will never see the light of day. Handicap Beat the Clock.
That was on the Channel 9 show. He did a show. I think one of the last ones he said, here's some things we shot but we could never air. And he showed a piece of that. I remember seeing that, and it was very sad and very terrible and very funny.
It was a biker who had lost a leg, and a guy in a wheelchair, and they had little things that would be difficult for anybody to do. But at one point, the biker, who was a biker, Jackie's joke about the biker, we talked about how he lost his leg, and Jackie says he didn't lose his leg, it left him. But there's one scene that you can't see it. They're racing, and suddenly the biker pushes the kid in the wheelchair with all his might, and there's a shot where the camera's here, and you see with a wheelchair flop just
right off screen. I remember that.
Right off screen, and he said, "I was trying to help him. He was stuck." And then we did a thing with the Menudo, with Ricky, what's his name, was part of the Menudo, and we taught them how to live. And I was dressed up as a former child rock star with a hairnet, and we taught them how to take the hubcaps off cars, and just the kids are laughing. I don't know how did they ever book those pure kids on that show. I'll never know, but that never showed the light of day.
Well, sounds like you might have a book in you there, just things that never made it.
What's in me mostly is breakfast, but I thought about it, but I'm not coherent enough to keep all these things. What we're doing here is when they come out, as I remember them. And before we go, one of my highlights was tricking the guy from the guy who was in the witness relocation program, and he used to come on the show periodically, Henry Hill. I pretended to be a woman who died in the robbery, and he believed it. He believed it. But and I'm doing my fake, Flip Wilson. My wife, my husband died because of you. And I feel so bad. And I said, well, what can I do to make it up to you? I said, $10,000. That'll make it out to Al Rosenberg. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I'll send you some money. I had no idea. Never knew. How could you not know that voice that's fake? Anyway, that was a great moment. Also.
Well, he was drunk a lot, so maybe he had a few drinks.
Something or drugs or something. Who knows? But yeah, there was something going on there.
Well, you're lucky to still have your fingers, I would say.
That was right.
Al, I enjoyed this. I really hope everyone else did because, again, as I keep finding other people that I'm interested in talking about the Stern Show, I see what people say, and they're like, oh, man, what's Al Rosenberg up? I haven't seen Al. I don't know what Al's up to. So I hope a lot of people are excited to see that you're healthy, you look great, you still got those voices going. You did Maya Angelou, or maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But I
probably did. I will say, every time I call the station, which doesn't happen very often, But the last time I called, Gary answered the phone, and I said, hi. He said, when I saw Al Rosenberg caller ID, I was afraid we'd have to start putting together a retrospective show because you died. I said, I told my kids, someone will call you when I'm gone. But
it's nice that they'll do a retrospective of you, at least. Hopefully they do one. It's done after you died. They're just listening to a thing where they had all these obits written for people, but they hadn't died yet, and they put them on CNN. And
I would love to hear it when I'm alive, but that if I'm dead, obviously I'll miss that show. But this was a pleasure also. Thank you. I hope I didn't get too gabby, but you asked a lot of the right questions, so I appreciate your interest and love the fans, best fans in the world, and it's been a great part of my history and a great part of being part of that. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Al. Again, we thank you for your time. Hopefully, we'll do it again. There's plenty of stuff to cover. We just hit the surface. So, I thank Al, and I thank you for watching. As always, sponsored by Masses Restaurants in St. Louis, 5 locations, stlmasses.com. Remember to subscribe and comment and share these because people want to see Al Rosenberg again. So, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.